All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, David. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the studios in Fairfax City, we're very humble and grateful that David Singleton accepted our invitation to our show. David, welcome to the show, man.
Pleased to meet you.
Same here. The last 2 years have been very difficult for everybody in the whole world. It had nothing to do whether you're a musician or whether you believe in the vaccine or the COVID has affected, every single person in the world. How you manage and how you holding up, man?
Well, we managed better than we expected. So as you probably know, King Crimson was meant to be touring in the US in 2020.
Correct.
And just like everybody else, we did nothing because we were all locked in our houses. So literally locked in. So in 2020, we went nowhere. From a musical point of view, it was interesting because we put out Music for Quiet Moments by Robert. So we put out one soundscape every week on YouTube to offer people a piece of calm in their lives. And that was wonderful, actually. I find it very therapeutic doing it. It was wonderful that people enjoyed listening to them. Fascinating the way the world, bizarre things happen that you don't expect, because we were giving them away. We weren't planning to sell them. We put them up for free on YouTube. Have a listen to this. It's wonderful. And having done that, a lot of fans got in touch and said, "Oh, can't we buy these?" So having given them all away,
that's right.
We then made a box set with 4 of them in 8 CDs in and sold them to people. And it became, I think, the highest selling soundscape album we've ever done. The one we intended to give away. Isn't it fascinating how the world works? So that was the first half of COVID. 2021, remarkably, we did tour the US. So we came all the way around the US, and from a managerial point of view, it was incredibly stressful for a number of reasons. Firstly, because until about a week before the beginning of the tour, we didn't know we were going to be able to play it. The tickets were all there. It was on sale. Everything was on sale. But we had to get a special visa to be allowed out of England into America because the border was still not open. It was only about a week. It was only about a week before the tour when they finally gave us permission and said, "Hey, you're allowed to come to America." So we came to America, and just when the new variant was coming out, and we went all the way around America, and somehow with 20 people in our crew, we dodged it. No one got COVID, which is wonderful because I don't know if you know, but you can't insure against COVID. So normally, when you go on tour, you take out insurance so that if anything goes wrong, you can get the money anyway. There was no insurance against COVID. So if somebody got COVID, we would have been left with all these expenses of this huge, great, 3 buses, 2 trucks, all these people on the road. We'd have had all the expenses and no income, but nobody got it. It was a miracle. We went all the way around, played the shows. That was wonderful. So that was last year. And this year we came out with just me and Robert got it.
That's right.
I don't know if you know, but so we'd literally arrived. We did 2 shows. Robert thought he was getting a sore throat, but no, we when we called the doctor in, it wasn't just a sore throat. He had COVID, so he had to do the isolation for 5 days, wait until he was better. So we had to cancel some shows, but fortunately, the rest of us are all fine. And so mostly, I think, compared to millions and millions of people who had a terrible time during COVID, remarkably, really, it wasn't, it was tough, but not in the way it has been for millions of other people. So
in this country, as you know, over 1 million people die and millions of people all the world. We had a crazy president before that didn't believe in the stuff, and it's crazy. Other countries did, like Australia, did much better, right? So and if, as you know, if you are a touring musician and you make your salary, when you're traveling. So if you stay at home, you don't get much money, so it's very difficult. Do you think that? I mean, there gotta be a way that eventually, right? So artists should put pressure on insurance company to offer a sort of COVID insurance, because you need to pay the money up front, right? You have the truck, plus never mind here, but for you guys that are foreigners coming here to the United States, you need to pay very expensive working visa. So right?
When King Crimson go on the road, we have something like $2 million worth of expenses.
Wow.
And I mean, we earn the money. So if the tour had been completely cancelled, probably we would have to have bankrupted the partnership that runs the band. I mean, it was that bad. We are on the hook for something like $2 million worth of expenses, and you can't insure them. Normally you can insure them, but you can insure them for everything except COVID, which isn't very helpful because the big thing that you're worried about is COVID. So
that's right.
I'm sure it's why a lot of bands simply stop touring, because the risk, the financial risk, is ridiculous. And interestingly, the film industry and the television industry had exactly the same problem during COVID. And the governments in both, I'm certainly in England and in Britain, and I'm fairly sure in America, the government stepped in, and the government offered insurance so that they wouldn't, otherwise people would have stopped making TV programs and films.
That's right.
Because they have the same problem, that they couldn't insure against it. And in both of those industries, the government stepped in to ensure that you could get insurance, but not with musicians. I don't know why, but not with musicians. Have all just been left out to dry.
In some European countries, because I have interviewed people from England, from Denmark, from Norway, the government gave them a little bit of money. I don't know, $2,000 a month for the next 6 months for them to survive. But many bands that are perhaps starting out on their life, they are not well known, they don't tour that much, they kind of went out of business, I think, and went back to school or got another job and forget about the music, because they thought we're not making money. I have a wife and a kid, I need to pay the bills, and right?
No, I'm sure a lot of people got caught in it. As I said, we were lucky in England. In Britain, the government offered self-employed people who earned below £50,000 a year some support, which is wonderful. They needed it. There was no support above £50,000 a year, and thankfully, I'm pleased to say all of King Crimson earned more than £50,000 a year.
Of course,
but that meant they got no support at all, which is fine. But they it was a funny situation. So you're right. You had a strange mixture, and I'm sure a lot of people weren't able to carry on easily with music during it.
Let's go back to the beginning of your life. Were you born like in a musical family? I mean, how old were you when you perhaps began, I don't know, taking piano lesson or guitar lesson?
Okay, so neither of my parents were overtly musical, but there was obviously something about me, because yes, I had piano lessons when I was very young. I can remember when I was sent away to boarding school, which wasn't a very pleasant experience, but I can remember when I was about 8, I used to creep under the bed sheets at night with a sheet of manuscript paper and write music. I've always wanted to compose music. So wow. I'm sure they're unlistenable if I found those manuscripts and tried to play them, but I can remember doing these compositions when I was about 8. So I don't know. I've wanted to do nothing other than music from about then. And until my mid-teens, it was really exclusively classical music that interested me. I knew nothing really about pop music at all. And sometime in my mid-teens, very late, I was probably about 15, my brother gave me some cassettes of the Beatles. Gotcha. And I regret to say that is what changed the direction of my life. So until then, it was really purely classical music. I was conductor of an orchestra. My brother gave me these cassettes of the Beatles, and parts of it spoke to me instantly. Parts of it I really didn't understand, but there was obviously something special about it. So I kept on wanting to listen to it again and thinking, okay, well, what's going on here? And so that's when I became fascinated with songwriting, and which then moved into production. And I've never considered doing anything else. It's that simple.
But you was any family pressure when you were 18 years old, when you need to make a decision? Well, it's music, it's school, university, your parents telling you, forget about music, you're not going to make any money, you want to go to college, find a girl, get married and make money.
So I was lucky. I went to Cambridge University. So I was very lucky. I went to Cambridge University, and the only time my father has probably given me, what was probably very sensible advice, was you're 3 years at university, and at the end of my second year, I was considering leaving. I was saying, I really, I want to go off. I want to pursue, particularly songwriting at the time. That's what I think I should be doing. Why am I at university? I should leave. And my father persuaded me otherwise. He said, hold on, do 1 more year, finish your degree, and then go and do what you like.
That's right. Yeah.
Which was, and I listened to him. Fortunately, I think I listened to him. But thereafter, my family have been unbelievably supportive. Whether or not they think it was mad at the time, I don't know, because they never suggested it. They simply, that's what you want to do, then we will do everything we can to support you, which is wonderful. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I have, well, kind of a little bit opposite of you. I grew up I never told you, I grew up in Chile. I was born in Chile.
Yes.
And I came to the United States to study, and I was a terrible kid. And when I was 14, I kind of got my first 3 vinyls. It could have been, I don't know, Genesis or Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, I don't remember. And I knew exactly that music was my thing. And my parents were very academic oriented. No, forget about music, man. School is the only way, and so the word. And I was a rebel, and eventually ended up here in the United States, and I did okay in my life. But
I think if you're really passionate about something and you follow it, you
need to do it. There's no way around. I mean,
you have no choice.
That's right. I mean, in many ways, people say, well, you became a musician, or a musician choose you, and probably that's the latter. I mean, some people are born for a specific thing and are very good at it, right? It's hard to become an architect if you don't have, I don't know, the skill set or the passion to do it.
No, and if you have a passion, you have to follow it, and you may not make as much money as you might have done in some other routes, but that's what you have to do. And if it is something that really, really matters to you, usually the world supports you. Not you won't make you very rich, but normally there is enough to get by somehow. That's my experience.
Well, if you're good at what you do,
then the world will be okay.
You will make a good income. And I interviewed one guy, I forgot the name, like a year ago. He told me, my dad told me, don't have a plan B. That way you need to make it. If it's music, you need to make it happen. If you like the thing.
Yeah, no safety net. Life is more exciting that way. No safety net. There we are.
No safety net. Are you happy doing? Well, you became a producer, record label associated, began working with Robert Fripp. You write your own stuff. Are you happy that you can do all the things?
So yes, I found it frustrating for a while that I couldn't properly address my own creative endeavors, like my own songwriting. I've written a book as well. That was partly because I had a young family. So in fact, it wasn't really just because I was working with Robert on King Crimson things. It was also, I had young children, and I don't find it possible to play, to be half-time creative, put it like that. If, in other words, when I'm a songwriter, or particularly if you're writing a book, you need to be able to do it full on. I don't think it's something you can say, oh, I'll do it on the weekend when I've got some time, and then I'll shut that door completely for the rest of the week. I think if you're a songwriter 24 hours a day, somewhere below the surface, it's always there going along. It's not something you can sort of switch off and switch on. So for a period of about 10 years, I sort of I put it in a box and sat on it and said, I'm gonna be a father, and I'm gonna work with Robert. And looking back, I found that frustrating. It was necessary, but frustrating. But no, otherwise, right now, I love the balance. I really enjoy my relationship with Robert. Yeah. I think the music of King Crimson is astonishing, and I'm really pleased and honored when I have a chance to help it into the world. And increasingly, I now also have a vehicle to return to my own creative endeavors. So right now, it seems to have all been a pretty sensible plan, even if there wasn't a plan in the first place.
That's pretty good. Eventually you get to the stuff you like it. What was the motivation to put this tour together?
Sorry?
What was the motivation of put the tour together with Robert and go on the road with the awful man and his manager?
Oh, okay. So it grew from the royal package. So before the King Crimson shows, we were discussing something that we could do to add value for special fans who were willing to pay more money for a special ticket, which was one of the ways of helping to pay for the $2 million worth of expenses on a King Crimson tour. We thought we should do a special package for fans, for a limited number of fans. And Robert finds it very difficult to do anything else on the day of a King Crimson show. So a sort of conventional meet and greet with the band wasn't possible. Right. And so when we talked about it, I think Robert had this bright idea. He said, what we should do, David, is, the fans should come in early and somebody should talk to the fans, and that person should be you. So I came on the King Crimson tours, and the fans could come in an hour early, and I would talk to them and tell them things about, how the world of King Crimson worked and the music. And then at the end, one of the other band members would join me for 5 minutes or so for a quick question and answer. And to begin with, Robert didn't contribute to that at all. Increasingly, though, Robert thought he should and would enjoy doing it. So Robert used to come out and introduce me. So we'd have an evening when Robert introduced me, I talked to the fans, and then another band member came out. And that sort of found its own rhythm by the end. And Robert found it frustrating that he couldn't talk for longer because he had to go and prepare for a show. So he couldn't really waste all his energy talking to the fans and answering their questions. So that now that King Crimson is no longer on the road, he said, well, why don't we do that? Why don't we go out and we'll do it, and we can both give it it's all we're doing now, so we can give it a whole evening worth of, okay, if you've got questions, we will answer all your questions. It grew from that. Yeah.
I'm happy you guys are doing that. And Robert, he's very focused. I mean, when he's in King Crimson, I don't know, 24 hours a day. I exchanged a couple of conversations some years ago with Robert Fripp. I don't know him personally, but he's very driven. He's very focused. It's different type of person, I think.
Well, I think when he takes his responsibility to King Crimson very seriously. Yeah. And when King Crimson is on the road, the purpose is to deliver the best possible concert that you can. That is why King Crimson is on the road, to play music that can change people's lives. And for that to be true, Robert has to put his entire focus of his entire day is on King Crimson. He gets up in the morning, he writes the set list for King Crimson, he practices the show, he doesn't allow any distractions, such that the show will be the best possible show it can be. And you're right. So when King Crimson is in active mode, really Robert can do nothing else. Nothing else that would require a significant amount of his attention. And so yes, so now this has become possible because it's not, which is great fun. So
absolutely. Feel free to elaborate on the motivation of the idea of creating the Discipline global mobile label. How it came about?
It came about because the rest of the industry is so corrupt. No, that's not. In Robert won a legal case, which meant he won back the rights to King Crimson music. Yeah, which was in the early 90s, and we were looking for ways to bring that music into the world, and there wasn't a proper vehicle. So we originally formed the label so that we could do the archives, and also to set up an example of how an ethical record company might work. So I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that DGM, for example, doesn't seek to own copyrights. Yeah. Which is not general practice in the industry, as you probably also know. Yeah. So, for example, we wanted to show, firstly, the artist should own their own copyright. Secondly, the artist should be fairly rewarded for their contribution. And general practice, neither of those are true. Most artists, their copyrights are owned by the labels, and the amount of money that they get paid in royalties is in our view unfair. So we set it up as for two purposes. Firstly, to be a model, and secondly, because we needed a vehicle to bring King Crimson music into the world. And it began just with the archive. So when the very first ones we did the string quintet, but then we went through and we did, an archive from Epitaph, an archive from 1969. We worked our way through the various incarnations of the band. In 2003, the whole catalogue came back, including the albums, the studio albums that had previously been licensed to Virgin EMI. And so we were then able to address those afresh. And for example, to release those in surround sound and things that at the time, major labels also didn't think was very interesting. Yeah. It's given us the freedom, hopefully, to look at a music catalogue and handle a music catalogue in a way that I think they should be handled by everybody. I think it's really sad that so many artists, their catalogues aren't handled, with the love and care that they should be.
That's right. What do you think should be the role of a record label? It used to be that will lend you money at the beginning. Perhaps you couldn't have the equipment. They will support advertising. They will support a little percentage of the tour. It doesn't exist anymore. So bands will say, well, if the record label is not going to do anything for me, then I'm better off creating my own record label and produce it as, David Singleton Incorporated, because they're not doing anything for you, right?
Well, they used to have two roles. They used to be gatekeepers, as in they were the people who chose what you listened to at one time. So in the days when it was difficult to put out a record, the first role of the record labels was they were the gatekeepers. They were the people who chose whether or not your music would be heard by the world. And you're right. Also at the time when it was difficult and you had to go and, make vinyl and put it on a lorry and ship it to a load of shops, that was something that ordinary little people couldn't do. So that was, when it first started, I think that was the major role of the record labels. They still do have a role in that most very large artists do possibly benefit from the sheer advertising rights of the major labels. If you want to be, a gazillion selling artist, the answer probably is the record labels still do have. It is something of a deal. It's a two-edged sword when you handle by the labels. So we're very happy outside of that system. Yeah, it's
What's the motivation? Let's say. So what's happened is, it's not my case because I buy a lot of music, right? So I support different band. I have a huge collection of music, but many people now in the world, right? Although vinyl came back about 3 years ago, and now cassette is coming back a little bit, fewer and fewer people buy CDs and buy record and so on, so forth, vinyl. So if on a way, let's say Robert Fripp got together with the guys and they want to record a new album and everybody is thinking great, and the cost is going to be whatever, 100,000 just to make the math. From on one hand, you want to create the music and you want to put it out there in the form of a vinyl or a CD for people to enjoy the music and buy it, but fewer and fewer people are buying that. So where is the balance between creating new stuff and then how you want to recover your investment from a financial point of view?
Okay, I will give you the long answer to that question. There's a short one.
I'm here to listen to everything.
I'll give you the long answer. So partly the interesting thing is that we still have rising physical sales. So I think the fact that physical sales are dying is true. I mean, it will happen over the next period, but it hasn't happened as fast as I think. It isn't happening with us in the same way that it is with other people. And I think part of that is that people still want to buy things if you make things they want to buy. So, for example, if in the olden days when, I don't know, you had one big hit and you could just put it on a CD and people would keep buying that CD forever and ever, that's gone. That is gone. You're right. People will not keep buying that CD forever. they'll listen to it on Spotify. However, in our case, for example, if you're willing to assemble a box set with everything from a particular album in it, and I don't know if you know the King Crimson box sets we do,
I do, yeah.
22 discs and 4 Blu-rays and whatever else they are. So if you are willing to take the love and the care to go and put something together that is a comprehensive overview, but mostly I think is made with love. In other words, this isn't made as a commercial venture. We simply look at it and we think, okay, if we were a fan, or what would we want in this box?
Yeah.
And if you do that, those things still sell very, very well. So I think that the notion that physical sales are dying is true, is only true if you don't try hard enough. In other words, if you, provided you are willing to make things that people would like to own, people will still buy them. It's probably why people, I think one of the main reasons why people buy vinyl is that there is something nice to own about vinyl. It's a nice artifact to own. Whereas the CD, I don't know if a CD was ever really, and it was a useful way of listening to music, but whether it's, I don't know, I have it, oh look, I have this CD, it's nice to own, I want to fondle it. That's not true, I don't think. So, so physical sales are interesting, and for years and years, when the whole industry was saying, oh, we're on all the streaming services, and our profits are dying, we're earning no money because our physical sales have died. We used to say, well, that's interesting because we're not on the streaming services, and our physical sales are going up. Perhaps there's a relationship between the two. So that's the first half of it. With albums, you're quite right that the days when you could spend a fortune making an album, certainly unless you're a very, very major artist, and you were going to get that money back, are probably over. And I'm not sure that it's such a bad thing. It's in other words, we have to accept that we are where we are. But if you go back to partly before Sgt. Pepper's by the Beatles, and certainly before Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, which are probably two albums where the relationship between recording time and live happened. Before that, albums was simply something that musicians did while they were doing everything else. So if you look at the schedule of any band, I'm playing a concert, a few days in the studio, concert. That was the rhythm of it. And the album wasn't this thing that you spent years doing. The album was simply a snapshot that you took along the way while you were playing live. Yep. Does that make?
Yeah, it does.
And I think, yeah. And if you look at life like that, then it still makes sense, because live music, people are paying more and more money, in fact, to go to live shows. So live music still makes sense. So in fact, if you look at okay, I'm playing music. Okay, then we're going to go into the studio and we're going to record this new material we've got, and then we're going to go back on the road again. Your studio costs don't have to be the astronomical cost that they used to be. Studios have got cheaper. I mean, a lot of people now can even do things at home. So recording costs have come down. And if we no longer think, oh, well, actually what I need to do is I want to spend 2 years in a studio recording my next album. Well, maybe the answer is maybe you can't, or you can, but you simply won't make the money you used to make. But otherwise, maybe that period is over, and now the studio is simply a snapshot of who you are, and then you carry on and you do more live performances tomorrow. So it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It's just a changing world.
It is a changing world, yeah. And I notice, I every time that, King Crimson is on tour, I see them like 3 or 4 times. I will go to Philadelphia or North Carolina, DC, and so I see it every time. And I notice the price of the vinyl or the boxes are very reasonable. Like, I don't know if I have, I think I have a couple of them here, like this guy or that guy. They are like, $20-$30, as opposed to, I don't know, I went to see Pineapple Thief a couple of weeks ago, Porcupine Tree last week, and so forth, and they're very expensive, as if they're desperate to make a little bit of money selling stuff, because they're, and the other thing, many, as if bands they are not promoting the music. They're making money selling t-shirt. I mean, the t-shirt that cost them, made in China, $1 or $2, they sell it for 40. A poster signed by some members, $100. And some souvenir or a catalog or brochure. They're kind of making the money there. So they're selling t-shirts over the
they're touring the music. They're touring. Well, so the box sets, we make them so people can hear them.
Yeah.
These box sets, a team of people make these things with love for about a year, and we don't really want those box sets to be things that only extremely wealthy people can own. In other words, we want them to be obviously they are expensive, so sadly there will be a lot of people who can't afford them, but we're trying to price them, where we think a reasonable number of people can buy them. They're not exclusively for the jet set.
Correct.
And the irony of that is that in a funny way we actually ruin our own profitability, because when we're making them, quite regularly at the end we'll have thought, oh, this is what's in the box set, and then we'll discover something else that we'd forgotten about, and we'll think, oh well, what we should do is we should throw another 4 CDs in because we've discovered this, and oh well, we better put another Blu-ray in because we've discovered this, and we'll add 4 or 5 discs to the box set, which probably costs us another $7 or $8 to make the box.
Yeah.
But we don't change the selling price isn't going to change at all, because the selling price we've already decided. So in fact, we're simply stuffing more and more things in, selling it for the same price, which in one way is, I don't know, you think was commercially mad, because obviously what you should do is put in as little as possible, and a bit like you're saying, some other put in as little as possible and sell it as high as possible. Right? And whereas I think what we're trying to do is do right by the music and say, no, this is what should be in there. This is a price at which we are making money, but we still think that most, a large number of fans can buy them. And I think that fans respect that, which is why they keep buying them. So you're right, you can rip people off. And I'm not implying those other bands are doing that. I'm not going to comment on that. But, but you're right, you can, once off, you can charge whatever you like for something. But there's a point at which I think the fans think that's what you're doing.
Selling t-shirts,
right? And the bands rightly should be upset with you. Whereas hopefully our fans realize, no, we're trying to be fair to everyone here, including the fans. Put it like that. We're trying to say, no, obviously it's a commercial relationship. We need to make money, but we're not trying to take the piss here. We're trying to say, okay, this we think is really worth this, rather than, okay, that little box we know you wanted. Okay, it's going to be $50 because we think you might buy it.
And the price of the ticket of King Crimson are very reasonable. I mean, everything has gone out and inflation and the world's, but they're reasonable in proportion of them. I mean, I pay. I'm a big, Genesis fan, and I go to London like 3 or 4 times a year to see bands that don't come here. So I saw the last 3 shows of the Genesis when they decided, well, we're not to be touring anymore, and it was like £300 or whatever I paid. And the price of King Crimson here in the United States is very reasonable, $150 or whatever the ticket for a good ticket, and people are buying that. So there is many times I heard Robert mentioning, King Crimson is, we want to create a very unique, the best band in the world, but we are not there to make money. Money is not the first thing. We want to, have a great band. First and second, we want to create a great band where all the musicians are working very hard to earn a salary. The money will come third or fourth, whatever, right?
Yes. So one of the business aims of DGM is to operate in the marketplace. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yeah. I think you broke up for a minute.
Yeah. One of the business aims is to operate in the marketplace while being free of the values of the marketplace, and that's exactly what it really means. So we accept that it's a commercial culture, so people are going to buy tickets, and you buying tickets is what enables the band to go home and pay their mortgages and whatever. So we accept that's the game, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is not to make money. So the purpose of going on tour is not to make money. The purpose of going on tour is to play music and hopefully change people's lives by the music you play.
Yeah.
As opposed to, hey, we're going to go on tour, and the purpose of this tour is to make as much money as possible, so we'll charge as much money as we can. That's a completely different aim. And so you're right, with all of the bands, the money is secondary.
Correct.
It's necessary. It's necessary to make it go round and for us to be able to do it. The money is necessary, but the purpose is to play an astonishing music event and to hopefully make it possible for as many fans as possible to experience that event. And you're right. So exactly the same as I said with the box sets, you have to try and find a level where, you know, the tickets, there is a variation in ticket price, so that it may be up in the gods, but I always quite like it when, you know, there are some really cheap tickets. You know, and at the King Crimson shows, I always used to go right up to the back, where sometimes they're about $30 or whatever, the tickets, right, you know, and actually it's still very good up there. I've gone up there.
Absolutely.
It's still great. So actually, if that's all you can afford, you really can still experience this show way back up there, but you can still experience it.
Yeah.
And equally well, if you've got more money and you want to sit right down in the front, and even better if you'd like to give the band even more money for listening to me whittering away for an hour before the show. Great. Okay, we're really happy because that helps us to pay the bills. So it's a balance, but you're right. The principle has to be that the music comes first.
Yeah. I noticed that, King Crimson is very careful with the remastering and the 5.1 and the quality is there. On the other hand, thousands of million people in the world, they're happy to listen to the iPhone or MP3 or where's the balance? What do you think?
Both are true, and in my life, both are true.
Yeah.
Bizarrely. So in our kitchen at home, we have it's not a Bose speaker. Anyway, it's a Sonos speaker. We have a single Sonos speaker. And actually, a lot of the music comes from Spotify in our kitchen, and I'll happily dance and jump around when I'm cooking to the music that's coming out of there. Yeah. And actually, even if that was a good MP3, the quality would be fine, and I probably wouldn't notice the difference between that through that speaker. I wouldn't notice the difference between that. And in my own love of the Beatles, I don't always like them, but I don't necessarily need all the remasters. Sometimes they're interesting to listen to, sometimes they're not. The main thing is always the music, as in it's I'm sure it's the same with you. When you listen, in the end, it may be a better recording of it, but really in the end, you're just listening to the song. Hey, I'm singing. Here is that music again. I know and I love that music. It's not. You're not going, ooh, that hi-hat sounds better than it did last time I listened to this. You're actually going, oh, I love this song all over again. So I think as a fan, there is a point at which, provided there aren't obvious flaws in the sound, which sometimes there are. I mean, sometimes there are old masters that sound so terrible, you think, why did somebody not make them sound better? But once they're reasonably good, for a lot of people, they are sufficient. I think 5.1 was a really good reason to go and revisit things, because if you listen to music on a good 5.1 system, that does completely change your experience. I'm always really, really careful when I have to do a mix of something to do the stereo mix before I do the 5.1 mix, because it's really difficult to go back again. It's almost like I've got a black and white photo and a color photo, and oh god, now I've got to change it into black and white again. So once you've heard it in 5.1 surrounding you, and you press the stereo button, you go, oh dear, that doesn't sound as good. So I think
go ahead.
So I think 5.1 was a very good reason to go back and look again at the catalog, and while people are buying CDs, obviously, yes, we should try and make them as good as we can. So the biggest difference was the very first album. The very first album, we found some tapes which were a whole generation earlier than the master tapes that had previously been used, and we knew those tapes had problems. So probably of all of the albums, the biggest leap was with the very first album. You could go, oh, hold on, we've got a set of tapes here that is simply very, very much better than anything anyone's ever heard before. So I think you're right. You're right. Both are true. It's a balance between You know, I'm very happy. I don't tend to use I tend to use Bose headphones, but I'm very happy just sitting listening to something on a pair of phones. I'm also love it when I can listen to something on a fantastic 5.1 system. Both are true.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I'm in the car driving, you know, going to work, of course I listen to the house.
Yeah.
I have a couple high-end stereos and they're imported from Japan, and it's a big difference. Of course, I'm very aware not everybody can afford a $3,000, $4,000 stereo, but it's a big difference, right? So people.
Yes, but my question is, if you, depending on what you listen to,
do I notice a difference? I do. I do.
Oh, no, of course you do. So I wasn't saying, between the two things you've described, there'll be a huge difference, particularly, as you said, listening in the car and listening on a fantastic stereo. But often the music can still speak to you in the car. Otherwise, you wouldn't be playing it.
Absolutely. But
yeah.
once I listen to 5.1 or Atmos or surround system, it's hard for me to go back. Yeah, I need to drive. I need to go to work, right?
Yeah.
So I cannot take my stereo with me in the car, right?
Yeah.
But I know, but I can tell the difference. I suppose that, I don't know, the difference between going to inexpensive cheap restaurant where the quality of food is not great, or going to a nice place. Well, if you don't have any money to go to a nice place, well, you're stuck there. But if you have money to take your wife and your kids to a nice place, it's a big difference, right?
I know, and I said I'm a huge believer in 5.1. I think 5.1 is the one more. There's a bigger difference. You know, you can remaster stereo recordings, and they are better if you listen to the two together. It does sound better. That's great. But the one that is completely transformative. Once you listen to something in 5.1 or Atmos, you go, oh, okay, that's a new world. So
yeah. Are you guys planning to reissue? I really like an album for Robert Fripp called Sunday All Over the World. It's I love that. I mean, I like the old stuff. For me, it has always been important to go back to the early albums from the bands. I mean, the early Genesis, the early Pink Floyd, the early King Crimson, the earlier Coldplay, whatever bands have been doing, to see how a band came together. And you see, well, these people have talent when they were 20 years old. So it's not an accident they're very popular. Coldplay would be a good example, right? They do very well. They go around the world. Well, you know, they were very good when they were 20. So for me, I'd always go back to listen to the early stuff.
I can give you the answer to Sunday All Over the World is that about a year ago, we got the master. We didn't have the original studio tapes, but we do now. We got them back. We transferred them. It's been remixed by Paul Stacey, who is Jeremy Stacey's brother from King Crimson. Yeah. So Paul Stacey has remixed Sunday All Over the World. One of my tasks when I get back off this is to do the surround sound mix. I told you I love surround sound. So when I get back, I'm doing the surround sound mix of Sunday All Over the World. We also have a good CD's worth of good live material of Sunday All Over the World. So yes, some point next year, we will be reissuing the all singing, dancing, fantastic version of Sunday All Over the World. So there you go. Yes.
That will be great. That will be great. What's the future of King Crimson? Eventually, Robert Fripp will retire. Is anybody, I don't know, easy for me to say, but taking the band over, or King Crimson will die once?
That's going to be up to the other members. I don't think there will be a King Crimson without Robert Fripp.
That's right.
I don't think I think that's unlikely personally. I suspect that some of the other members may continue playing the music. I know Adrian Ballou has been playing it. And in fact, he gets together with Tony and Pat with the Three of a Perfect Pair thing to play bits of it. It's very possible Jacko will continue singing bits of the older catalogue. Yeah. So almost in the same way that Steve Hackett has carried on with his Genesis Revisited things.
That's right.
I would hope that the music of King Crimson in some way will carry on living and breathing. But I don't see King Crimson without Robert. I think to return where we started with that awful man and the hard ass who was willing to make King Crimson play at that level, I don't see that without Robert personally. That'd be my my intuition.
Yeah, I remember that when I discovered King Crimson, well, so many years ago, and I listened to some interviews from Robert Fripp. He came for me like I don't know if I want to use the word, but like a little bit arrogant, if you will, and I didn't understand the stuff. It took me a while to discover that King Crimson is a different type of band. King Crimson is a, you know, it's a way of doing things. It's a method, and some musicians are able and capable to stay in that model, and some musicians will know, and they will not become part of King Crimson, or will stay with King Crimson for a while and then disappear because, I don't know, maybe Robert is very strict and we do things here this way, not the other way around, this way. And you need to, you know, if you're willing to be part of the band, those are the standards. What's your take on that?
Well, I feel
I put you on the spot.
it is. Well, it is a band that requires total commitment, I think. Yeah. If you're in the band, you're in the band, and it does make huge demands on you. In the King Crimson documentary that's just been announced, actually, it's out on the 19th of October, I think, isn't it? So the King Crimson documentary, yeah. Trey Gunn describes being in King Crimson as having a low-level infection. He said, when I was in King Crimson, he noticed when he left the band, he said, when I left the band, I realized that when I was in the band, it was like having a constant low-level infection, as in there is always a pressure and a responsibility and something hanging over you. So King Crimson places huge demand. I think it both offers huge rewards for the people who are in it, and also places huge demands on them. That's why I think that's why the heights of King Crimson hopefully are what they are. But I'm going to need to go in a minute. Sorry, that was my phone in the background there, so I will.
I will listen to it. Yeah, I think yeah. When I ask you the last question or one or two, feel free to elaborate on your career and work as the picker. Okay. In the magazine, I know it's important to you.
Yes, I'll talk about that all day. Now you've added that right in. The Vicar. So the Vicar began when. The original genesis of the Vicar actually was that we were, as always, in conflict with someone in the music industry.
Yep.
And I said to Robert, why has no one ever written whodunits about the music industry? You know, because it lends itself to detective stories. There's lots of corruption going on. And you don't have to invent the stories. They make them up all the time, as you probably know. They're real. And Robert said to me, the reason these stories don't exist is because you haven't written them yet, David. So I took this as a challenge, and I wrote the first Vicar Chronicle, and it's a fascinating experience because when I'd finished writing it, I put, written by Punk Sanderson on the bottom, and so the two characters in the book are the Vicar, who is a very eccentric English record producer, and his rather more riotous assistant, Punk Sanderson, who writes the book.
Yep.
And it didn't feel at all right for me to put my own name on the book, which was fascinating because obviously I wrote it, but books sort of write themselves. I can't explain any other way than that. You start writing the book. Oh, this is saying it's unstable again. Can you hit? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I do.
So
Yeah.
You start writing the book, and then sort of the book writes itself. So I don't think I really invented these characters. These characters just appeared and they existed. And so, okay, Punk Sanderson, I'll write a book by Punk Sanderson. Here it is.
Yeah.
And it was a fabulous experience. The first two came out a while ago. The third one is now available on this tour. So if anyone's coming tonight, I will happily sign the third Vicar Chronicle is now available. And then as a spin-off of that, having created this fictional record producer, I thought, oh, this is wonderful. I can now make an album by this fictional record producer, the Vicar.
Yeah.
And so, and obviously, my background as a songwriter, I had a bundle of songs that I've been dying to find a reason to produce on an album. And I got in touch with some wonderful people, musicians who I would like to work with. And Some of them I wrote very bizarrely, as in, you know, would you like to appear on an album by the Vicar? With no explanation of who the Vicar was, and all these people said, yeah, of course, I'll happily work with the Vicar.
Yeah.
So the Vicar, so it was wonderful. So the Vicar produced an album.
Yeah.
And it's called An Album by the Vicar. And similarly, I didn't put I wrote the songs, but the album really is by the Vicar. And you say some things and people look at you and think, David, you are quite mad. But the other night when I was asked about this, I said, well, I think Punk Sanderson is a better book writer than I am, an author than I am. And I think the Vicar is a better producer than I am, even though, of course, they're both me, if that makes any sense. But somehow, when I'm producing an album by the Vicar, I know, you know, I created this, the Vicar exists as a person in my head. I thought, oh, the Vicar will make an album that sounds like this.
Yeah.
And I listen to this album and I think, well, actually, that's a really good album. I'm not sure if I'd set out to make an album by David Singleton, I don't think it would be that interesting. I think it's a one. So, yes, so I'm really, really pleased that finally I've been able to address, it's horrible, creative urges. It's you started by saying you aren't a musician, and I think that you may be blessed because there's something about the sort of the need to create things. It sort of bugs, it eats away at you until you satisfy it. It's a internal need. And yep, so there's an album by the Vicar, there's 3 books by the Vicar.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I have some people foolish enough to really like the first album who are constantly bugging me to finish the second album.
Yeah.
So when I finish this speaking tour, I need to get back and address that. But yep,
yeah. Are you going to be selling that? Are merchandise going?
Not the album, but the third book, which is the newest one. So the third book literally doesn't exist anywhere else yet. We haven't published it or sent it to Amazon or anywhere yet. So the third book is exclusively at the moment available at these talks. And yes, I will come to the merchandise table and sign copies for anyone who is kind enough to buy it. Yes. Yeah,
I will do it, and I will see you tomorrow. It was very nice talking to you, Dave. Say hello to Robert, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night, man.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.